Hey guys, welcome to Real Politik. Very special episode this week. One of those emergency episodes. Like, remember when Trump got shot and Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart, they did an emergency episode and saved democracy.
Get their alibis.
We're doing one of
David Aronovich special.
Yeah, David Aronovich emergency, where he was like, it wasn't me.
Jack, do you want me to pick up and do an intro, and then once we actually get onto the topical stuff, that'll fire you up again?
Yeah, please do that.
Yeah. Okay, right. Just 1 second, okay? I'm not used to it. Just let Jack do the intro like 99% of the episode. Hi everyone, welcome to Real Politik. We are going tonight with myself and, of course, as ever, Jack. And today we are joined by top journalist Clara Hill, one of the good ones. We thought quite accurately that Jack was saying I'm going to have to edit about 15 ums, but you have to do that every time I speak anyway, right? But we correctly identified that we absolutely needed to do an episode on all the shit that's been going down in Britain with the far right protests and riots, but also that it would be a bit crap if it was just me and Jack doing so, having not actually been in places directly affected by them, not left the house, basically being shut-ins and just sort of taking the piss out of the participants online. So we got Clara as well to add a perspective on that as well. And again, as I said, lots to talk about, lots of stuff to get our teeth into and the reaction to it as well. So I think to start off, what's been happening where you are over the last week or two?
You know, over the weekend we all watched the horrible pogroms happening all over the country, and there was that horrible wench MP, I don't know what her name was, but she was the MP, I think Sarah Edwards, the MP for
one of the new intake, yeah.
Tamworth,
yes.
And basically had stood up and said that she wanted, her constituencies wanted their Holiday Inn Express back.
Yeah.
Which seemed that she was using her parliamentary privilege to incite something, and she did anyway.
It was hard to tell how much of it was stupidity or malice, but regardless, it was 5 days after she made that speech that people actually stormed that exact hotel.
Yeah, and people were like, "Oh, people wouldn't have known it was housing refugees." Yes, you would. You would totally know.
Every city has the rumours, that hotel's got refugees in, that one's got refugees in. But that happens up here in Glasgow. Some of them are true, some of them are bollocks rumours.
But also, stop burning hotels if you think they have refugees in them. That's called attempted murder.
Yeah,
anyway.
Basic level.
But
she was like, the residents want their hotel back. And it's what do they need a fucking hotel for? They live there anyway.
Well, I don't know, maybe they have family, maybe they have horrible in-laws who stay and they want to send them off to a hotel. But ultimately, she basically didn't really seem to feel bad about it, which I hope she does.
Hotels are ultimately for dirty foreigners anyway. If they're gonna go anywhere, a hotel is the exact place, whether it's tourists or desperate people fleeing war and poverty. Foreign people go in hotels. Residents have homes and so forth. Anyway, so I thought that was a foolish response to the issue. Wasn't that her maiden speech in Parliament?
I don't even know. I haven't been paying attention to these Labour MPs. I mean, occasionally when they appear on my Twitter feed, and they always just I remember I laughed so much when one of them was like, the trains from Wales to London are really shit, and you're like, the door, you're gonna fix it then? And they're like, no. So anyway, so we all watched this in horror, and so we all thought, not we, the general collective of people on Twitter, because you had to seemingly be on Twitter to get any fucking clue as to what was happening, because if you watch BBC News, you wouldn't have realised that they were going around kicking random people of colour in the head, which is a shame. And they seemed, the BBC, I don't know if they're doing it anymore, just referring to them as protests, which is
it's been very inconsistent.
Anyway.
They've occasionally used what you'd probably consider sensible, accurate terminology. And they've been using also all sorts of euphemisms or bland terms. There was at one point, again, this was on the BBC at some point, they were covering one of the ones you'd call more a riot than a pogrom, but obviously some of them have crossed that boundary. But it was a counter-protest there as well, and it was kicking off. And they described it as a conflict between anti-fascists and pro-Britain protesters. You know,
well,
because obviously
it,
anti-fascists are inherently anti-Britain, and you know what is someone that doesn't really know the issues gonna make of that?
What we're seeing now is that these Tommy Robinson types, they have moved so far to the right that they are actually now on the far left, and the people who are opposed to them out in the streets have moved so far to the left that they are actually now fascists. And I've been terribly concerned by the mobilization of the far right on our streets, such as on Wednesday with the anti-Semitic hate marches we saw across the country.
Well, that's the thing. Some people were calling it anti-Semitic hate marches, but also some people were just taking full credit when it was framed as a good thing. And I don't mean to refer to the MP for Walthamstow.
Walthamstow. Yeah.
What fucking what cheek? She was like, "This is what Walthamstow looks like." Lady, you told them all to stay at home,
so
and then 10,000 people.
In general terms, everyone stay at home. She
said
specifically personally advised the lesser Jolyon to stay at home. And then when the counter protest went really well and loads of people turned up and basically routed the fascists, she was like, "Oh, this is great. Look how great Walthamstow is. I'm proud of everyone. Here's a photo of a separate event that I'm not saying is a separate event, so it can imply that I turned up." Honestly, just disgraceful.
But like,
don't forget to donate to the crowdfunder to get Stella a massage.
Apparently, it's been donated to a food bank, and it's not unconfirmed that it was someone taking the piss.
But even her response, even her response to that was funny because someone went, it didn't go viral, but got some numbers basically saying, "Look at this ridiculous crowdfunder," and Stella Creasy actually replied to it saying, "Well, actually, I've got nothing to do with it, but the person that set it up meant well, and actually, you're basically bullying her by tweeting this." If she was as good at anything else as she was at cry bullying, she'd be the best prime minister the country
it's actually
like
never talk to me again.
No, but like it has actually like really like set like a fire in me when people who have been smearing the Palestine movement and the marches as hate marches for the past, across the mainstream political Westminster perspective, like they've been right since October the 7th. And then all of a sudden, we're now the goodies.
According to the Daily Mail, yeah.
According to the Daily Mail. And then, I don't know, some people I've been talking to be like, "Can't you just take the victory?" And I'm like, no,
well,
I can't take the victory.
Tory boy Pierce was right to defend the Daily Mail's honour as an anti-fascist publication against Zara Sultana's vile smears on Good Morning Britain the other day. Arguably still the second least bad GMB, Good Morning Britain, but nonetheless, that was a disgraceful fucking video. I just saw a bit of it earlier when I was browsing through a bucket of slop.
You know,
the idea of interviewing your wife. Are you mad? Like, I know British journalism is terrible for nepotism. Like,
you've got to keep that
fine.
bare minimum plausible deniability.
I don't even care so much about the fact that he was once a politician. I mean, obviously, I think that's another problem, but it's a lesser problem to interviewing your wife, who is the Home Secretary, like, after a weekend of race riots. Are you fucking kidding?
You'd think they would just farm that one interview out to someone else.
They get him off the screen, like, pretend. And like sometimes getting angry about British journalism just feels like so futile because it's just going to keep happening because like the systemic change is not coming, but every day it just finds a new way to astound me. I'm like, I still have like a working brain because I'm just like, oh my god, it's still egregious.
Obviously one of the root causes of all this, one that we've been advocating for a long time, as that's not us patting ourselves on the back so much as most people on the British left identified this a long time ago and have been shouting it from the rooftops. The press have been stirring up Islamophobia and anti-migrant sentiment for at least 25 years now, consistently on a weekly basis. At least 25 years is quite a lot longer than that in terms of anti-immigrant sentiment. But what we're seeing now is them realising on some level that they have contributed to this really horrible, distasteful stuff, which is happening on a level when hotels are being stormed, people are being attacked on the street, cars are being checked to see if the driver's white to decide if they let them through or not. This has, I think, upset some people who are usually able to ignore the consequences of their actions. So they're just flailing around trying to find anything else to blame. And that's why you get this ridiculous shit. Like Zara Sultana saying that there's lots of racist headlines in the Daily Mail, and the Daily Mail writer going, name one. As if there aren't 2 or 3 every single week for the last 30 years.
It's so funny what a fucking central casting Tory that guy is as well. Tory
it's his brand.
He
though,
loves it.
His whole thing is that he's quite smug and
ridiculous.
obnoxious and slimy, really.
His other shtick is being mates with the guy from The Mirror, whose name I've totally forgotten.
Kevin
Maguire.
Maguire.
They used to do, like, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to do the press preview together, and they were like, ha ha ha, isn't this so funny? I'm right wing and he's centre left, ha ha ha, you know what I mean? Which, it's a funny shtick for, like, one thing, and then it's, like, not that funny anymore.
Yeah, but, like...
the gag's done.
If you keep getting back on it, you're kind of identifying why the centre-left are ultimately useless.
But you asked about what happened on Wednesday was because of what happened in other parts of the country. Basically, people were like scrambling to get into like community group WhatsApps to be like, we need to, mobilize, get on the ground, blah, 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 blah. Like, not blah, 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 but like, anyway. And so there was like this message that went viral in like various WhatsApp groups, which is another question, the whole idea of like WhatsApp threats and like how to gauge of like this string of immigration centers that they were going to target, and they tended to be like either like law centers or solicitors offices, and they were all over the country, and 3 of them were in London. So there was one in Walthamstow, one in Finchley, and one in Harrow. And so leftist groups were trying to like mobilize people out in Walthamstow, and it seemed that Walthamstow was, well, people were putting a lot of effort into Walthamstow, but there was less effort into like Finchley, so I opted to go with some comrades to Finchley.
So you were actually at the one in Finchley?
Yeah, I was.
Were there many Zionists in attendance? Did Lee Harpin's mate come back with his Israel flag to trigger the anti-fascists?
Well, to be honest, I'm 5'2", so like I didn't really see anything. Like even though I was like standing at the front. I was standing at the front. I didn't really see anything because apparently there was. I heard of rumours anywhere between 1 and 5 fash, if you don't count the police, no. And we didn't even know where they were or how many there were. Basically, there was like 1,000 anti-fash and a few fash. Apparently, because of the mobilisation, the 20 or so fash, what I heard was that they all just gave up and went to the pub.
Yeah, that tends to be what
so they
happens,
still
think,
had they had a fun night anyway.
Yeah.
So like, okay, but like you go to these things and community mobilization, that's always a really good thing to like see after like days and days of seeing like your fellow countrymen be the worst type of person in the world and to see all these other people, and that's kind of heartening. But also it's a bit strange as well to be like, okay, so we had to come out here to like see off some fash, which we don't know if we've done yet. How true was this happening? So it's a very strange situation.
I just think it's been like the most incredible thing in the world to see that like Britain's Zionist movement cannot resist instantly derailing a massive victory for anti-fascism to make it about how actually progressive people are anti-Semitic. Like they couldn't just sit this one occasion out and be like, yeah, these protests are great. Like Sarah Sackman, what is she?
She is the attorney. No, the
she's
Solicitor General.
I
think she's the Solicitor General.
Solicitor General, that's it. I had Attorney General in my head. But she literally called the police on anti-fascist protesters because somebody like on a couple of WhatsApp groups, not even like affiliated with the organizers, but I would defend it on substance, like not just, oh, it wasn't an official, correspondence from the organizers. She literally called the police on I don't know who. I don't know how she managed to get to the root of who posted it.
She might have been
it just basically said, like,
people that were sharing it.
Nazis, fascists, racists, and Zionists out of Finchley. And this was, like, seized upon. Again, you couldn't just let this one go. Just like, look, Israel's committing a genocide. These people are obviously very much against that. And for understandable reasons, due to, I don't know if anyone saw the image of, like, all the horrifically dismembered carcasses of dead kids in the hospital the school that Israel blew up yesterday. Obviously, the kind of people who go to anti-racist protests, not fucking overly jazzed about that kind of stuff, really. So they could have just said, and you know what actually makes Zionism look better? Is if we align it with a kind of global anti-racist movement. Like, yeah, we were out on the streets. Instead, it's been like the most incredibly solipsistic display from British supporters of Israel that I have seen in my fucking life.
I mean, some of the usual suspects, your Lee Harpins in particular.
He reported it wrong. There was one tweet I saw
Harpin getting the facts wrong.
No, it was actually so funny. No. One of the stand up to racism organizers was like leading this chant where it was like, we're black, white, Muslim, and we're Jews. Anyway, that was the chant to like that there are many more of us to you.
Okay.
Anyway, and then but he didn't put in his tweet he didn't put the white one bit, which I thought was really funny because it was a direct quote. Like, he was like, they're chanting this, which was like, if you're there to like report the facts, do it accurate. But he did, one of my favourite parts was during this chant, it wasn't the steward, somebody next to me went, and we're gay! Like, kind of as a joke, but, you know, I don't know if it was true. But
he reported that bit, didn't he?
He reported that bit,
and
because it
actual chant. Wow.
I mean, it was just. But
he knows exactly what he's doing there.
But I mean,
he knows
I don't
the
know.
far right will see that and be like,
maybe,
oh, look.
But like, maybe, I don't know his intent, but it was not accurate reporting.
Yeah.
I saw our boy Archie tweet out that slogan. I was like, damn, Archie contains multitudes.
Yeah, we were like, because it was such a funny, like, because it was one of those chants that was kind of like verging on the cringe, but it was just like a very funny, like, self-congratulatory chant. And it was just funny that he was A, upset by it, and B, didn't write it down correctly.
But I think...
and the gay bit was a gag. Like, somebody just added that in as a funny bit, and then he reported it down. I didn't even know it reached the other end of the road, which I found very funny.
Yeah, Harbins and that have seen that poster that had the word Zionist among many other things they didn't like and been like, yes, finally, we don't have to pretend to be on the same side as the protesters anymore.
We've got our convenient excuse. Yeah.
The news cycle can return to the left being evil
again. But the thing, oh my God, no, the other day I was talking to my mum, right? And my mum is pro-Palestine. She's not very political. She's political, but she wouldn't describe herself as a leftist. Anyway, so we were talking about the array of things that had happened. And she said to me, completely unprompted, in one of my rants, Zionists and Tommy Robinson have a lot in common, don't they? And I was like, yeah, Tommy Robinson is a Zionist. Though apparently, like, if you point out the fact that the far right are Zionists and, like, Israel, by design, being, like, a white settler state designed to, like, expel the Jews out of the UK, I mean, in part, yeah, obviously, Tommy Robinson is a Zionist. This is, like, an empirically provable thing.
Also, like, I don't mean for a second to defend these, like, fascist morons trying to burn people out of immigration centres and fucking throw bricks through mosque windows and shit. Yes, I was at one of the protests, but I was shouting who the fuck is Allah as a genuine question. I looked into it after that, and I have since received the light of Islam. But let's be honest, Israel are worse. Like, the Israeli right are worse than the British right, and the Israeli centre-left are also worse than the British right because they have much more blood on their hands. Like, ultimately, all right, historically, Britain's imperialist crimes, I would say, probably eclipse those of Israel. Although you can probably blame Britain quite a bit for Israel specifically doing that to the Palestinians. But, like, sorry, what is the death count of, like, Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage in the last year? Don't get me wrong, they would have rivers of blood running through the streets if they could. but they don't have the capacity to. Like, Israel does what these fascist scum in Britain can only ever dream of, but we're supposed to give them a special dispensation for being the understandable kind of fascism. The fascism that you have to cut a special break compared to the other ones that have killed far fewer people.
I mean, there is a reason that the British far right, historically extremely anti-Semitic, and still some of the online younger currents are today, basically decided to be publicly supportive of Israel pretty much the exact same point when Islamophobia became the main driving force of the far right. It's literally, which of our enemies do we hate the most? Who are their enemies? You know, let's go with that for a bit.
Well, it was funny, though. I still can't get over the Stella Creasy thing.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah.
If she had a crumb of self-awareness, she'd be genuinely
10,000
dangerous, but she doesn't.
10,000 people crammed into the streets of Walthamstow. I saw the pictures. I mean, I wasn't there. But, that's insane. That's a lot of people. And then she goes, oh, Walthamstow is so great. What? You said don't go. You literally said, do not attend. You said, stay inside your house. That's mad. How? What? I feel like I'm going insane every time I, what?
The Labour right don't really understand solidarity as a concept.
No, so, I think they do. I think they do understand solidarity.
Well, they think that the only legitimate form of politics is campaigning for a Labour MP every 5 years.
I think the right wing understands solidarity in a way that we probably don't, because they keep their mouths shut about how much they dislike other people. Yeah, I would say that right wing knows lots about solidarity. The fact that her own mates aren't being like, Stella, you said stay at home.
You even get solidarity on the further right, like Douglas Murray's solidarity with Kevin Spacey, the unfairly cancelled guy. The witnesses against whom just die of natural causes. It's just a kind of just this kind of plague that just seems to particularly befall accusers of Douglas Murray's close friend Kevin Spacey.
No, I don't stand behind that, but that's only for legal purposes. Oh my god.
Yeah, does Kevin Spacey still have a pad in the UK, you think? Now he's no longer creative director of the Old Vic, whatever.
Jack, this discussion is probably more likely to see us wind up dead than any previous one we've had on the podcast. And there's quite some competition for that.
The Clinton kill list ain't got nothing on this shit. You need to look at their friends rather than just the Clintons themselves. But anyway, yeah, just a wider point. But yes, you're right, Clara. There is indeed a strong strain of solidarity on the right, as you can see with their endless solidarity with the state of Israel. I mentioned earlier the horrific images of dead bodies from that school that Israel bombed last night that they say is a Hamas military base, obviously, as they do with every
school,
small
hospital,
residential home.
Individual ambulances.
Yeah. Yeah, Hamas planned October the 7th in the back of an ambulance. But David Lammy issued a statement of, I suppose you could call it condemnation, in which he urged Israel to respect international law, but not until after he'd condemned Hamas for Israel killing 100 or so children. I couldn't even wrap my head around that, but that is true solidarity.
Did you see he posted a very serious photo of him on the phone to important people?
Oh, God.
That's
actually my favourite
That's what Lammy's
genre.
been wanting to build up. That is what he's been building up to his whole life.
One of my...
David Lammy gets to play at being important. Finally.
Well, there's that. I don't know if you are aware, but one of my favorite political images is that picture of David Cameron when he's on the phone. I think it was over the bombing of Syria. I saw it when I was 19. It was 10 years ago, and I thought it was the funniest thing. Because obviously he's
very over the top sort of serious face.
Yeah,
this is my world leader face.
But this David, he's on a landline, right? And it's the wire. He's straight. He's pulling the right face. He looks really severe. I thought that was the most ridiculous you could possibly get. Because why would the first thing in that terrible, horrible instance would be the first thing to be oh, you boy, take a picture. But then I saw the David Lammy one, and it actually makes the David Cameron one look higher, because David Lammy is not on the phone to anyone because he's on his smartphone, and you can see that he's holding it away from his ear, and you can tell when you do that to the phone, it normally lights up to see who you're talking to. because that's the way smartphones go. Like, if you take it away from your phone, it's programmed to like show the interface. There was no interface. That was a locked phone. There was nobody on the other end of that phone.
He has to pretend to take calls now and then from important people. So, like, you can get Ben Judah out of the office for 5 minutes so, and talk freely.
Not only was he not on the phone, his face was wrong. His face looked like he was hearing not news of Iran being invaded or whatever was happening. It looked like he was, like, receiving, like, personally sad information. Like, he was getting dumped or something. Like, it just didn't, like, he clearly was not a kid in the noughties who watched too much America's Next Top Model. I also like
David
the idea
Lammy,
that
he basically was a kid in the noughties when he first got into Parliament.
Yeah, I know, but I actually was a kid in the noughties and I shouldn't have watched that America's Next Top Model, but I did anyway. But like also the idea that like he's so obsessed with being foreign secretary that like they just have little photo shoots in there. And he can't even be bothered to, like, why you do it on your mobile phone? Do it on a landline. Anyway.
I bet Lammy will be on the phone and he'll be like, oh, don't mind me, I'm just talking to Obama. But it's actually just some minor spad from the Obama administration. It's like one of the Johns from Pod Save America.
But, like, you can't have international telephone calls. I mean, you can, unless you do it via WhatsApp. So why are you doing it on your mobile phone anyway, David Lammy?
Speaking of, like, international calls made by senior British politicians, I thought it was hilarious how both Sunak and Starmer, when they first became PM, did these little videos where they talked to Biden on the phone. The Sunak one was great because it was in his wider Gary Glitter soundtrack to I'm the new Prime Minister and I'm getting shit done video. But there was this bit where he called Joe Biden and he was like, hey, Mr. President, it's Rishi. ... Sunak, because Biden was obviously like, who the fuck is Biden? Sorry, I don't take crank calls. Like, fucking, I'm not interested in your insurance. But then Starmer got in and he did, I think firstly he did a video where he was talking to Biden on the phone, and this was like a week before Biden dropped out, and Biden was just like, he gave this scripted response, which is just like, Mr. Starmer, you're a great man. It is great to can't wait to work together. Then they actually met a week or so after that, and it was like the video of Starmer and Biden actually trying to shoot the shit and have a little constructive discussion together is one of the funniest things I've ever seen, and it was one of the things that led to my senile Starmer joke that I always make, because like Biden holds out his hand for Starmer to shake and Starmer doesn't notice it for like several seconds. It's enough for me to get the senility smears rolling anyway.
If you come across as the slow
Anyway, Lammy loves that shit.
conversation
Lammy
with
would love
Biden.
to have the mentally dead president of the United States on the phone.
Well, we might have to deal with giggly Kamala.
God. Yeah, well, Kamala's right up his street, I think, that kind of establishment Democrat shill.
I don't think he cares. I think that's another thing. That's another thing about, like, the government's concessions to the far right. So, like, it's Kamala versus Donald. I'm on first name terms with both these people. But, like, I also think that, like, oh, yeah, like, he's said stuff before. He's been like, oh, we could work with Donald Trump. And you're like, why are you so keen to work with Donald Trump? You know, the adults are in charge. That means we have to, like, concede to the far right. And, like, so much of the far right's electoral success has been down to the fact that people have just been like, all right, that's a really good idea. Let's add that to our policy. Okay, fine, fair enough. Like, no, you're just breathing new life into it. You're giving it oxygen. When they stand outside and they shout, stop the boats, that's a Jonathan, I mean, like, that's literally a slogan from the past years of our politics.
Slogan Starmer uses.
Yeah, like Jonathan Ashworth got beat by an independent MP whose name I've forgotten.
Shaka Adam.
Yeah.
Like, that guy loses his seat, gets booked on every single fucking broadcast opportunity in the country.
Every day.
Complains about how he got democratically voted out of his seat, which is his constituents' right to do in our, like, crappy Westminster system of formal political process participation. So it's just kind of like this whole, like, ecosystem of, like, that's the thing that I personally find really, like, dejecting about it, is the fact that it's hard to reject it at the ballot box because there's no offer of anything
look at Ed Balls.
better. Yeah.
Like, Ed Balls' constituents were like, this guy is a useless cunt. And then he did some stupid dances, and they're like, oh, not his old constituents. He's not shown any inclination to run for Parliament again, but he's just become this ubiquitous media figure. And John Ashworth, like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, give it 2 days and he'll be the fourth and spookiest Mike on the One Decision podcast.
I have to be cynical in the fact that, like, he either keeps going on the telly because when they call, he answers, which is probably, like, the number one thing for a lot of TV shows and guest bookers. It's just getting somebody in the seat.
I mean, he's not got a real job at the moment, so he's probably...
Well, yeah, like, he's just, like, he's there. He picks up the phone. They get him on the podcast. I mean, I do think editorial judgment probably means that, like, they like having him on because he's their friend and he's, like, aligns with their view of the world. But, like, I feel my most, like, even with my centrist dad hat on, the idea that you can bitch and moan that much about being democratically elected out of your seat, unelected, you know, first past the post, it's pretty hard to do that. To take out one of the safest Labour seats and be like, actually, no, I don't want an MP who is Islamophobic and the like.
The deciding factor, he probably would have had a big swing against him, but the deciding factor for him actually losing that seat was that mad interview he gave about sending back the Bangladeshis, isn't there?
Yeah.
Sending back people from certain places.
Yeah.
If a lot of people in his constituency were already very annoyed at him over his stance on Gaza, you know, if you're giving inflammatory interviews like that, you're guaranteeing that anyone wavering is going to vote against you, or anyone who was thinking not going to vote, right, actually find the guy I dislike the least and vote for them instead of you.
Yeah, especially
it's a good job Jess Phillips didn't lose her seat, or we'd be seeing her in the media all the time.
The last election, I remember feeling, until the 7 MPs, independent, and then France, and when it was like, it's so over, and now it's so back. But when we was in the so over bit, it was like, oh God, Labour are going to win, like, who am I going to vote for? So you might as well just, like, go into the ballot box and, like, have a bit of a laugh and, like, vote for whoever you want. There's no real reason to not. It's not like the people of Leicestershire East were like, oh, okay, well, we're going to have a Labour party. We might as well vote how we like. And enough of them voted how they like to get rid of them. As is their, like, literal democratic right. They exercised it and they didn't do anything wrong, and they're being smeared by their ex-MP.
I think people need to consider that, like, maybe John Ashworth he feels sad and he's being a bit publicly sad, and men's mental health and all that, and maybe we should have a little bit of sympathy for John Ashworth, because if he'd got into government and done that deal with the Taliban to send desperate asylum seekers back to Afghanistan to be politically persecuted by the Taliban, which he talked about on Newsnight during the general election, maybe we could have avoided all these issues on our streets. We could have got a handle on immigration, the Ashworth effect, and we could have averted all this unpleasantness. Yeah, Ashworth fucking sucks, and obviously the point of all his woe is me self-pity tour of the TV studios and shit is to imply that there was something illegitimate and untoward.
Yeah, they're all like, and it's just like, it's ridiculous. They just got voted out. Like, that's literally the bare minimum you can do with these people is vote them out. And when you vote them out, they still come back. It's like, and then or they get thrown in the House of Lords.
We've had years and years of every protest over any issue being met with, look, that's not the way to do it. We live in a democracy. You can vote the people out if you disagree with them. And then you vote the people out because you disagree with them. They're like, this is a disgrace. You can't do that.
Yeah, like, this is a disgrace. Yeah.
They really do consider the only legitimate politics to be, like, voting Labour every 5 years. And, like, it has to be Labour. It cannot be an independent candidate.
Someone was rude to me on the street about my voting for a genocide.
Not even that rude.
Like, obviously, yeah, exactly. They asked you a question. They were like, excuse me, you have said some very inflammatory things about people in my family, as you have every right to do, to ask your MP a question. Now, whether you didn't do it with, like, the most polite tone of voice, but people are allowed to be pissed off at you. And
it's basically treated these guys being persistent and asking them a fair few times as the most abuse he's ever had. Well, okay.
If you don't want a job, it's so cliche. And I don't like this because I feel like the creation of the demigod and, like, the myth of Corbyn is, like, probably, like, yeah, just a person. But when I was canvassing for Jeremy Corbyn, if you walk around with a Jeremy Corbyn sticker on, people stop you in the street and they like tell you how he personally changed their life in very dramatic ways. Like they started out with a house, their mother's immigration status, random people just, he's not even there. They just tell you as residents of Islington North how he got them out of prison, how he got them a job. And that should be the bare minimum for all MPs. And like, it's not. And there are reasons. It's a route to like either becoming a lobbyist or a whatever. But what are you doing? Like, you're in the wrong job if you don't like people being annoyed at your voting record.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, Corbyn can't be accused of not leaving his voting record open for attacks. You know, he's voted with his heart his entire life, regardless of what people fucking say.
And like, it pays off. Like, people respond to it. 40 years of like being the Trot MP or whatever. I don't know. He's not a Trot, but you know what I mean. But like being that, people like it. People respond to positive forms of politics that doesn't like demonize ethnic minorities and immigrants because it's a made up problem. People don't really care, I think, on the whole. I don't know, I like to think. Maybe I'm naive, but I really believe that's true.
Polling showed that during the Corbyn years, when Labour weren't vilifying migrants and especially asylum seekers, people's interest in the issue of immigration went down. And it wasn't, again, polling showed it wasn't a priority for voters prior to Blair getting in and imposing more restrictions on immigration than any other government in history. The centre-left have fed into this at every turn, and it makes total sense to me that as soon as Corbyn is replaced by a guy like Keir Starmer, who basically says, well, the ambient wisdom of the political establishment is that immigration is a problem, ergo I treat it as a problem, then there's no pushback against that, you know, like I say, ambient wisdom anymore. That becomes, once again, totally dominant strain of thought.
Yeah, if people who engage with any section of the media are just confronted with two or more, say three, because obviously you've got Reform as well, three political parties competing over how best to fix what is obviously a huge problem, people are going to assume it's a problem on some level, because why would everyone agree on it that they see on their telly otherwise?
Yeah!
So that's probably why you're having Corbyn and at least a wing with power in the Labour Party saying, no, actually, here's the other side of the argument that you've rarely heard for the last 20 years. Did move the dial a little bit. It obviously would have needed to be done for a lot longer to properly fix people's attitudes in Britain. But if arguments aren't made, a lot of people are never going to hear those arguments. And that's why the Labour right are consistently so cowardly about it, because a lot of them are broadly pro-immigration. They just don't want to say it because the Daily Mail will tar and feather them.
Yeah, and like I do think that like people, I don't know, I've noticed a lot of like discussions on the internet around what motivates racists. Like, is it a class thing? Is it this, that, or the other? And I don't know the answer, but I think there are more than one kind, if that makes sense. Like these groups, they all, or like individual people unaffiliated with like organised far right, there's different motivations behind being incredibly racist.
Yes.
I know so many posh people who are some of the most virulent racists I've ever met have all been like incredibly posh.
That's where a lot of the theory heads of the far right almost all come from. Obviously,
Douglas Murray with his fucking colonial fucking
head, his colonial
yeah,
expression at all times.
That lipless fucking
just this constant disdain for everyone on the planet, like visible on his features. But like also,
I think what was
even
that
the more
job like?
Cartoonish like stratas of the far right, like you got stuff like fucking Country Life magazine, which most people in Britain have never heard of and isn't really about
shit
like
Blur song for
country
wankers,
issues.
middle class southern
Not like
softies.
Blur, even the fucking New Labour one, even Alex James would be like far left compared with these people. There's these whole little ecosystems of like
and like
posh
the fact
people
that like
complaining
people
about bloodlines. Basically, it's gross.
then the fact that these people keep getting platformed, like the idea that you can in this country you can seemingly make a lot of money by being very, very, very racist on telly. Like, there is a lot of demand for it. People, like, your Matt Goodwins, your Douglas Murrays, your, like, it's incredibly
if you can
lucrative
balance the
to be
tightrope
racist.
and basically have the same political views as Lawrence Fox without going full Lawrence Fox. And for Douglas Murray, that literally means just being posh and putting a sort of academic veneer on the things he says. Not a convincing one at all, but it obviously fools some people.
He's
then-
just
like-
rehashed Enoch
Yeah.
Powell, isn't it? He's got
Yeah.
the same
But
sneering
he's-
patrician vibe, and I'm not just talking about
No,
his
he
racist
literally,
rhetoric, but
that's
his entire
my
worldview.
theory is that he models his whole shtick on Powell, among others.
I think
it's
his
a very
voice is
studied
starting
thing.
to increasingly resemble that of Enoch Powell. But I mean,
I'm
I
not,
feel
not
like
starting
you know,
to.
Elon...
There was a period a long time ago, the one period in my life, I wasn't depressed at the time, I don't know why I did it, where I actually watched Question Time on any sort of regular basis. Happened to be the era where they had him on all the time, like with Farage level frequency.
It's because they pick up the phone. I mean,
Yeah.
also, like...
But I've
I think, like...
never had such an instinctive dislike of a pundit even before I fully appreciated how terrible his views were, because you can tell the hatred flowing through him even when he's given like an innocuous answer about participation in sport or something. He still sounds almost as hateful as when he's talking about making life unpleasant for Muslims.
He's primarily like Enoch Powell in that he's a guy who will be bitter his entire life because the British Empire is mostly over and he doesn't get to become Viceroy of India.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to bring Eve in, by the way, but it's not
Okay.
showing her account when I search for it.
There she is.
Hey, Eve.
Hey, can you
Hello.
hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Oh, amazing,
Yeah.
it worked.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why I couldn't find your ads on Skype. Just
None
wouldn't
of
let
us
me-
properly
it-
understand how Skype. Well, Clara probably does, but we
No, I haven't used it in years. I was like, how do I contact you, Jack?
we're probably keeping Skype running. We should get sponsorship off them, really. Like,
Yeah.
I only ever use it to talk to my therapist, so
This is basically
Oh.
that.
Well-
This will be some pro bono
Yeah.
therapy for you, and I'm not just
Political
talking about
therapy.
my love of the world's greatest band, U2.
disclaimer: none of the Real Politik hosts are qualified therapists. Please do not take any advice from us. It
Advice
goes
is
to
at
any
your own
listeners as
risk.
well. Yeah,
And none
yeah.
of them are actually U2 fans, other than me.
I'm not a host of the Real Politik, nor am I a qualified therapist, but I'm very good at advice. That's a lie, but whatever.
we'll take Clara's advice only.
Yeah, that's our
So,
official
Eve,
advice
we've
to
all-
all our listeners.
I have an agony aunt. Strew off.
We've already heard from Clara on the Finchley anti-Semitic pogroms. Could you tell us about the anti-Semitic pogrom you attended?
Oh my god.
Oh my god, he's gonna get cancelled.
Well,
No
we're
one's
all
ever
born
been cancelled for anything they've said on Real Politik. No one other than hardcore fucking devotees of JFR thought ever tunes into this podcast.
Even Oscar Terji has never been asked to listen to a full episode of our podcast, and that is a man driven by hatred of people exactly like us.
No, everyone who listens to this is exactly on my political and comic wavelength, and will recognise from my ironic joke there that actually, if you are a passionate and devoted anti-racist.
Well, I actually just got back from seeing Jeremy Corbyn again, which is really cool.
Yes!
Woo! I was just at Finsbury Park, so we had like a mini anti-fascist, anti-racist rally at 2:00 this afternoon, and it was like really, really well attended. It was really cool. You really could see like how diverse Finsbury Park area is, and we had loads of different speakers, and then Corbyn was the main speaker at the end. There was lots of different groups like trade unions and stuff, but I mean there was also Stand Up to Racism, and they basically are like a SWP front. But I mean, if you ignore like them asking for money at the end, it was really good vibes, like good weather, really good community feel, really positive, quite like healing after seeing everything, and then after generally Wednesday going very well all around the country. Yeah, it was really cool.
Did Thornbury show her rotten face?
Oh no, I haven't seen her around in ages.
Because she actually signed a joint letter with Corbyn condemning the fascist riots, which must be the first time that she has in any way interacted with him in like a good couple of years. I'm sure she didn't actually speak to him, but
Was
their
that,
people
it's
must
just like
have
an
coordinated it.
It was probably like a Google form, like, hey, Emily, add your name to this thing. Yeah, great, shall do. And her spad probably did it.
Yeah.
Well, she's got a lot of time on her hands now to sign shit, obviously.
Yeah, because she called the wrong man boring.
Which, by the way, like,
If she hadn't gone on the Newsnight and, you know, signed off on a genocide, I would have been like, justice for Emily, because, like, you should be able to call people boring.
Yeah, definitely.
It was factually true in that case as well.
it's
But
actually true.
Very
She
fucking
told no
boring.
lies. But
as you say,
not
no
on that
sympathy.
occasion.
No. But she told no lies.
I remember, probably not the last time, well, hopefully not the last time, but the time Thornbury was having in contact with Corbyn was when he accidentally slapped her boob. You guys remember?
Oh, God.
That's happened to me so many times.
That's real
It's like
contact.
she went to give him a high five and then moved, and he just like got her boob by accident. It's like,
That's happened to me. Solidarity again, but again, I don't actually mean it, but that has happened to me a lot.
So it was good. Did you go to one in Walthamstow on Wednesday Eve?
yes, yeah. Oh, that was amazing. Like I've still
Defied Stella's orders.
Oh my god, this fucking woman. Oh my god, like, I'm getting like progressively more and more angry at her. But now she's not my MP anymore, so I said let it go. But I mean, now
Yeah,
I've
you got
David
Lammy, who's great.
I know.
Who's a massive improvement.
Jesus Christ! If you look through David Lammy's tweets, has he mentioned Muslims or Islamophobia or standing up for that part of his community? He doesn't give a fuck. Like he's never here.
He remembered to condemn Hamas today, though.
Have we all condemned Hamas today? Yeah.
Do your give us this day our daily condemnation of Hamas.
But yeah, you were saying Stella Creasy told the community not to go. Like she put out these Instagram live videos where she was like, yeah, I've been talking to the police, as she always does. And she was like, the police have told me that actually there's not a threat to Walthamstow. But Walthamstow was on like the list, like I'm sure you probably mentioned like this list that was going around. And I definitely wanted to go because like I've lived in Walthamstow like a really long time. And so she was like, the police have told us that this is not going to be a target. And then in the same breath, she basically said for us to like not go out on the streets.
Yeah.
And like
she even told the Jolyon community to stay.
Yeah.
Usually the backbone of any anti-racist protest.
Is that how you say his name? I thought it was Joylan.
I think it's like Jolyon.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've only ever seen it written down.
I like to say Jolyon. I just think of, these are jolly characters. They're happy centrists.
Yeah, so she told us not to go, and then I think he was tweeting like, oh, I've decided I shouldn't go out and join the anti-fascist protest. But thankfully, pretty much the entire community ignored her, including the many members of So Solid crew, which I think is amazing. There's this like photo of like So Solid crew like all standing on the corner of Hoe Street where the McDonald's is, all like standing side by side being like fascist out. It's amazing.
And Paul Mason was there.
Oh, fuck it up. Like Paul Mason, seriously, like I bumped into like my friend and he was like, oh, I just seen Paul Mason. And I just started laughing, thinking he was joking. And then, like, see Paul Mason's tweeting about it. And I was just like, this fucking guy. But I didn't
saw a
think him,
picture.
thank God.
Plainclothes
I saw a
officers at
picture of Mason.
every protest these days.
Yeah, when you see Mason at the protest holding his camera, taking pictures of the protest, you're like, okay, that is not someone who is just delighted by the inspiring scenes he's seeing. He's emailing back to his contact who is telling him, fuck off, Paul. I'm busy. I've been too busy organising these fascist protests with Tommy Robinson. I don't have time for this crap. We've got people taking photos anyway. We don't have any opportunities opening up at the agency in the coming months. But God, I hate Paul Mason.
He did this thread of him in Walthamstow, and it was just, for me, it was just quite annoying seeing him on what I feel are like my streets right by my road. It's like, fuck off. But then he did this thread.
Well, shout of Walthamstow.
There was this, like, one of the tweets in his thread was like, and it's just nasty behaviour. He said something like that they shouldn't be doing religious chants. And I did not like that at all, because I don't know what exactly he was referring to, but the only thing I could think of was because when we were doing the chants, usual things like whose streets are streets, fascism out, all this kind of thing. And then it just kind of naturally like flowed into like free Palestine. And then we were doing all the like usual Palestine chants. And then So one of the women who was like leading the chants, I think she was with Health Workers for Palestine, and she was doing some of the usual chants like in Arabic that you'd hear on protests. So that was the only thing I could think of Paul Mason was referring to, which it's not great. But apart from Paul Mason, the vibe was amazing in Walthamstow. Like, it was really, really special. There's quite a few articles from like 11 years ago in Walthamstow where basically the same thing happened. Tommy Robinson and the BNP and the National Front said they were going to march in Walthamstow 11 years ago, and 200 of them came and the community drove them out. So there's a precedent in Walthamstow for this. And I was quite skeptical that the fash would even turn out in Walthamstow at all, because I saw like a lot of stuff on social media being like, if they think they're going to come to Walthamstow, like they can try it. Because when I got there, it felt like the entire community was out. So many different kinds of people, so many young people in one of the like anti-fascist organising groups. It seemed like there were so many people who like hadn't done anything like this before, really young people, like early 20s, some teenagers, and it just seemed like everyone was out on the streets. It was really cool. And I guess because the school's out as well, a lot of the kids are out too. And it was all kind of pedestrianised because the police there was a big police presence. They'd blocked off like all the roads. But it was really quite beautiful because it felt like the whole community was there, and it felt very unified in terms of we were coming together to show the fascists they can't come here. If they try it, we will be here. And the estimates were like 10,000 people, which is crazy, but it was really special. Yeah.
That is spectacular. We haven't really talked about like why the fascists were on the streets in the first place, which is, I think, like worth at least touching on. So it was that this 17-year-old kid stabbed up a Taylor Swift
a kid's dance class,
dance, dance recital. Yeah. I imagine it was children doing the dancing, and it was 3 young children who he killed, but there were also some adults there who were wounded.
Yeah, other kids were in, like, loads. I don't know the exact number, but other kids were injured as well. And like adults were injured, like trying to save kids.
Yeah, and so it's a really horrible and properly senseless attack. And, you know, obviously it's a cliche of people who want to wash their hands of the political connotations of violence when they say, let's not politicize this issue. But this one, it does seem like a difficult one to politicize for me. But I mean, by God, the far right managed it.
I mean, I would say that based on what I know about the senseless act of violence, it does seem like an attack on women and girls. I mean, I feel like it's really weird to like speculate on like active court cases or like just senseless crimes like that, but like it definitely, if one has to politicize it, it does seem more like an attack on women and girls.
I mean, I would agree with that. Like at a Taylor Swift concert, how could you not interpret it that way? And as far as I understand, there isn't a definition of femicide in the law in this country. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I know there is in other countries.
Well, no, I think those points as to the gendered nature of the attack are very valid, but that's not the line that the far right went with on it, obviously, which is that from their perspective, it was an attack on white British people. And like, I read an article about the attacker who, I know that legally he's 18 now, so can be named. I don't think there's any point in doing so, really. But immediately after this happened, the far right ran with this thing about this is the Muslim culture, you know, the homogenous Muslim culture.
Before they know who did it.
Exactly.
Like the Plymouth shootings, if you remember them a year or two ago, that was basically a white incel young adult thing. But when that was going on, like literally ongoing, and they just got him and stuff, all the usual accounts were doing their sort of, religion of peace, I wonder what colour this child turned out to be stuff. And then obviously deleted them en masse as soon as they're like, it's this guy, here's a photo of him. They do it every time. And then occasionally, if they're right or close to right, they're like, this proves that I'm right and the left are in denial and all this. It's a strategy at this point.
This kid's family were from the denomination of Islam, where you regularly attend church and worship Jesus Christ as your Lord and Saviour. This was at like a church-going family, and I believe his parents were Rwandan immigrants, but he was born in the UK. Now, regardless of the disparaging comments that I've made about the Welsh people over time, I do think that they are legitimately British citizens and part of our culture, to some extent. Like,
God, I wish we were.
Yeah, I know. The Welsh nationalist movement may disagree, but it always comes back to basically. So when it turned out that his family were Rwandan immigrants, presumably at some point the far right learned that they were not Muslims. And that puts the entire cultural differences argument that they had in the mud. Obviously not that I agree with the idea that I, as a white British person, have more in common with like British fascist pieces of shit than I do with Muslims who share many of my values. Obviously not. But like their contention is, these people whisper it, but they come from a different culture to us, where a culture that apparently believes in like stabbing young children. I'm not sure what exactly they mean by that. But if you're continuing to say that this is about this kind of cultural clash, cultural difference, then like Rwanda's a 92% Christian country, and this kid was not born in Rwanda. He was born in the UK. So I have to assume that they're just talking about the kid being black. That took me a long roundabout way to get that. But when you break down their, I'm not saying, we need to beat fascists in the marketplace of ideas. But when you break down their arguments, it's always like, no, but he wasn't a Muslim. No, but he was born here. So what is your point about him being some kind of outsider who we need to get rid of? Are you just saying that we need to deport second generation people of color who are British citizens and have lived here all their lives? And yeah, they are basically, I think.
Like a lot of them would think exactly that.
Yeah, this is why, like, you definitely just need to not debate racists.
Yeah.
Like, be like,
get them off the street.
Racist. Like, you're a racist. I don't know how. I mean, like, I'm perennially interested in like how you change people's ideas, because I think that's like a good thing to be doing, is to like vaguely understanding where people who come from different perspectives come from. But if you're coming from the idea of racism, if you just like accept that like this is true, but it's not, like you're just like, you're wrong, bye. Like the Matt Goodwins, bye, get off my telly, what are you doing? You've nothing to say of any use to anyone, go away.
Yeah, well, I feel like these are the people with whom I have irreconcilable cultural differences and such a vastly different view of the world.
But where we actually are as a country, in comparison to what Clara said the approach should be, is we have a world where Matt Ford, on his podcast, hosts Tommy Robinson as a special guest.
Did you listen to that, by the way?
I listened to the first 40 minutes or so, of which 15 minutes had Tommy Robinson on. I just couldn't take anymore.
God.
But it really does speak to like this like middle class thing of like, you can debate someone out of their ideas.
Yeah.
And you actually can't. Like, I think there is a thing about like some people you can and some people you just can't, especially if they're making money out of their ideas.
Yeah,
especially
because they're just on the grift.
Or like they're on the grift, or like
Ian
they're
Dunn.
like,
or not just on the grift, but just like if you're economically tied to these ideas, it's actually
incredibly hard to like
Yeah.
talk you out
of them.
I think there are some
People who are not lost causes, and I think that you can find common ground. But I think there are some people where you're just like, I will not talk to you if you're going to be a racist. And I think the idea like you can like have civility, devil's advocate debate around people, you just waste so much time.
I completely agree, especially with civility and politeness and respectability. Like, we have to think who benefits from that being upheld. We're never going to be polite enough for these people. Like, they're always going to find something, like they're always going to find a certain language on the Palestine marches that they'll say it. So this is going to happen every time. So there's no point in conceding any ground or agreeing and saying we shouldn't say this or that, because it will never end.
Yeah.
And what Clara just said about the economic system, like we have like an economic system of whiteness, like which benefits white people. And we can say that, like we can be honest about it. And with some racists, they have like no curiosity about people who are like different to them, because we are different, like we are all different, and that's okay. But that was part of the messaging today in Finsbury Park, is we are different, but that's really beautiful, and that's what makes a community. And that was one of the chants, whose community, our community. And another of the chants from Walthamstow was black, brown, Asian, white, black, brown, Arab, white. Like we are all different, but that's okay. And if we approach each other with curiosity and sharing and love in our hearts, basically, that's how we should approach things. And I'm really glad that we've been able to get out on the street in certain numbers and show our neighbours that fascists are not welcome on our streets, because I know a lot of people who have been really scared over the past couple of weeks, and people who've said they were afraid to like leave their homes and stuff. And so I hope that has made a bit of a difference.
You're absolutely right, Eve. But in looking for our next discussion point, I just went on the timeline of my new mic. We used to be the British Michael and us for the former Ilford South MP Mike Gabes. Nowadays, I've rededicated my life to studying Mike Katz, the chair of the Jewish Labour Movement.
Oh, God.
And so I've gone on his timeline. And Eve, I don't think you'd got here yet, but I mentioned earlier that yesterday Israel blew up that school, that Palestinian school that was apparently the number one Hamas headquarters, and they killed about 100 people there, and there are horrific images of dead children. Anyway, Fania Oz Salzberg, who is a lifelong member of the Israeli left by her own description. I've seen many tweets of absurd dipshittery from this woman. She says, "Today, Hezbollah missiles destroyed yet another school in northern Israel, this time in Kibbutz Manara, also the Kibbutz library." Incidentally, didn't the fascists in Britain destroy a library the other day?
Yeah.
Yeah, was that Liverpool, I think?
And a Citizens Advice Bureau.
Was that the one that was right next to a police station?
I feel like, obviously, like, it's all horrible, but the Citizens Advice Bureau is definitely an attack on people in need. If the Citizens Advice Bureau is responding to your request for help, you need a lot of help. God help you. So, like, that just feels like particularly such a horrific attack. Not that all of it's horrific. A library is also horrific.
Well, it's the same with these centres that are there to like help asylum seekers and stuff that they attacked. And I noticed in the condemnations of that from like Starmer and all his people, they can't say, and it is particularly rotten that you do this attack on the most vulnerable people. They have to make out that basically, oh, it's just standard run-of-the-mill violence. It's like, no, it's actually worse that you are doing this to people who are like outcasts in society. They are like on the underbelly of everything.
I've seen a couple of people tweet, and I assume this is true, that longer-term left-wing activists, so basically people a generation older than us, basically saying that when they were fighting the NF in the early 80s and the far right in that era, the far right were basically just targeting the immigrants, and saying that now you get all this stuff about like targeting activist judges, targeting the parts of the community that help the immigrants, the immigration lawyers getting all sorts of abuse. And this is the stuff that absolutely comes pretty directly from the papers, I think. The woke judges stuff.
Yeah, like the idea that, like, which has been egged on by politicians and media, like the idea to attack like solicitors, barristers, like people who like work on like legal aid. If you require legal aid for your immigration or housing, they're not your enemy. Their clients are not your enemy. And like the fact that people have been like led to believe this is so dispiriting.
I mean, obviously,
Well, that's what happens when fucking Keir Starmer won't tell them that their real enemy is the capitalists whose fucking support he depends on. But just going back to this tweet from Fania Oz Kataji Salzberger, she says, "Fortunately, unlike last week's attack on Majal Shams, no deaths." So she is specifically making a choice to talk about a school where no children were killed rather than this one where 100 were killed yesterday. The pupils have been refugees since 7th of October, but there's no single post in the social media about the ongoing destruction of Israeli educational institutions in the Galilee, because who cares? Like, and I have to say, Yeah, I agree. Who fucking cares? Like, that's not actually what I was looking for on Mike Katz's profile.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just highlight this article from Publication of Record, the Jewish Chronicle, which Mike Katz has shared and called Excellent, which is by someone called Gabby Wine. Gabby
yeah,
Wine.
I saw the tweet about that, yeah.
Gabby on the fucking wine again. Excellent, Mike says, from Gabby Wine at Jewish Chron today. You can't fight racism with racism. If anyone knows about fighting racism, it's Jews. So let's read this argument as to how you can't fight racism with racism. So, rally organizers, when you raise your Palestinian flags, when you hand out flyers calling for the expulsion of Zionists, aka Jews, or the wrong type of Jews. So she's like, aka Jews. Oh, well, no, okay, they're not talking about left-wing anti-genocide Jews, but still, you meant Jews. Also, they weren't handing out the flyer, were they? It was on the internet.
2 sentences in, and this is already actually trying to fight racism with racism on at least 2 different counts, quite apart from what his fucking own headline says.
When you raise your Palestinian flags, when you hand out flyers calling for the expulsion of Zionists from Finchley, you do the opposite of what you set out to do. You alienate a race and you ostracize us from a fight which is as much ours as it is yours. Possibly even more so, I would say. In fact, I would say that writers for the Jewish Chronicle are bigger experts on Islamophobia than any Muslim in the UK. Even worse. So this is the really egregious paragraph. Sorry, Eve, did you want to come in there?
No, I was just going to mention that at the rally today at Finsbury Park, we had a speaker from a local mosque in Stoke Newington. We had speakers from the mosques and we had a speaker from a synagogue as well, which was really great to see.
But this paragraph is the real egregious one. This is only 2 paragraphs. I'm only doing the bit that Mike Katz thought was such fire that he had to screenshot and post it. Even worse, you risk pushing Jewish people over the parapet to walk with the likes of Tommy Robinson. Left-wing Jewish people, radical left Jewish people, socialist Jewish people who are critics of Israel even, all of these people just one step away from being turned into a far-right hate marcher, apparently. Maybe they just mean to walk with the likes of Tommy Robinson to go to the local Coke dealer.
Didn't that happen back in about November? Didn't Tommy Robinson turn up to the pro-Israel demonstration in London? He got arrested at it.
Gabby Wine sort of alludes to that. She
Okay.
says, the sight of a smattering of Israeli flags at one of Robinson's marches in July made me shudder as much, if not more, than seeing Palestinian flags on the anti-racism marches. So she's outright saying, like, I shuddered to see Palestinian flags at the anti-racism march.
Stood between a Palestinian flag and literally Tommy Robinson and doing the sort of Larry David, which side am I on? That's a real brain teaser, that. Fucking hell.
But the Larry David, which side I was on, was making a point about how silly it is and how much he doesn't care. Anyway, sorry. But yes. I love Larry David so much.
Yeah, he's
you
so
have a
good.
tattoo, right?
Yeah, I love him so much. I have a tattoo of him on my forearm. My mother was so happy.
This piece, though, I just clicked on the
so
actual
cool.
thing. I'm remembering I did actually already read this full piece, and it's like most of it is just this kind of, it's like Jess Phillips style self-aggrandizing, self-mythologizing autobiography. It's just like, yeah, and then people always thought I was a Christian because I'm white, and then it talks about how like Jewish people were the backbone of the South African apartheid struggle, and also how they were the backbone of the civil rights movement in the US, and then it is literally just a couple of paragraphs at the end, which are just like, so don't get those fucking Palestinian flags out, or I might have to join the Football Lads Alliance. It's just a little aside at the end, basically.
We talked about the background to all this kicking off with disturbance and so on, but I think once it started going widespread and people started getting arrested, it sort of shifted to like, oh, actually, it's about 2-tier policing. Can we talk about how ridiculous it is, the idea that there's 2-tier policing where the police routinely discriminate or are disproportionately deployed against white people, white British people?
It's so
Yeah,
offensive.
the police refused to crack
Literally.
down on the pro-Palestinian protests simply because the people on them committed fewer crimes.
I have
Personally seen, I mean, like, I know it's just a personal anecdote. I have personally seen about 50 police officers arrest one teenager for a sign that they thought was questionable. Like, we all know the stats, we all know this is ridiculous, but, like, come on. Again, it's one of those falsehoods that people peddle.
It is ridiculous, and it is completely the other way around. I mean, like, the Palestine demos are very heavily policed. Like, the Walthamstow demo was heavily policed. No Fast showed. Earlier today at Finsbury Park, there were just an insane amount of police there.
You've got to take it outside
just
the
one of-
vacuum as well. Like, I've never been stopped and searched, for example.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's so ridiculous that you have to take time out of your well-researched argument to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, it seems like a time-wasting tactic to get you to explain again and again and again that the police are, like, and again, this isn't like a tinfoil hat theory. The police there's been report after report that, especially the Metropolitan Police, I don't know necessarily about other police stations of the country, there's probably been less scrutiny on them, but, like, it's just one of those things that it's just so patently ridiculous to even entertain it as an argument.
It's probably not helping the case that Keir Starmer and his allies are all exclusively thanking the police for stopping the riots. You wouldn't get the sense that ordinary grassroots activists played more of a role in putting a stop to this than the fucking police did.
Yeah.
Clara, I know you've got to go, so should we wrap it up at this point?
You could continue without me, I wouldn't be offended.
I might need to head off as well, so...
all right.
Okay,
That's all right.
Let's wrap it up then, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks to both of you for coming on, by the way.
Thank you so much.
And to
Hope I
Clara
don't
for
get-
persisting through the tech issues as well.
I hope I don't get cancelled, and I hope this doesn't impact any prospects of my jobs, but it's what I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Anyone listening, if you didn't like any of the views expressed on the podcast, it was actually me and Jack doing an unusually good impression of Clara. She doesn't think that.
You've
Did that in your new bit.
You know, I'm a master of voices. Gapes,
Yeah,
Welsh
Jack-
people,
Jack
women.
known for his mimicry. I think you banned from France for doing Macron that one time.
It wasn't one time, it was
No, it
many times. That fucking French cunt. Reference for the 2017 RP heads there. I wanted to say, by the way, Clara, that not everything you've been saying has been coming across for me throughout this recording. Has it all been...
It's come across for me, so I think that's
Okay.
a you problem.
Excellent. Yeah, there's a lot of me problems, so that makes sense. I'm sorry, Clara, that I had a mini breakdown at the start of the episode because of my tech issues.
You've had the full real politic experience. Like, if you ever became a regular guest, you'd be guaranteed to experience that at some point. But you've got that right in the first half hour of the first
That's
time.
fine.
So
It's fine. You're having
Clara
a
actually
breakdown.
witnessed me almost having one in the flesh because the Ticketmaster app wouldn't work outside of Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, no.
Oh man.
It's fine. You just have to persevere through breakdowns. They come and they go, but they go as well as much as they come. Right. Anyway, I have to go now. I have to go meet Abby at a pub.
Say hi.
She's a real one.
Bye. She is a real one. She's crazy, but in the best way.
All
Ah.
right. See you later, Clara. And Eve, I'm very glad you got to make your RP debut today as well.
Yeah.
I forgot to ask you to record your own side, so you might not sound as good as the rest of us, but I can splice your bits in, I reckon.
Okay, yeah, I haven't been doing anything advanced. I just clicked accept, so...
What I hope is that Clara's laughter was picked up on the mic, because I could often see her laughing at my great jokes, but not hear it at all.
Yeah.
And
it's very
so I'm
important
hoping-
for Jack that he gets a certain quota of people laughing at his jokes in every episode. He's trying to juice the
just like
stats to make sure everyone thinks he's the funniest real politic member.
There was that time when I doctored the episode so that you and FFF were
you've
laughing
done-
more at my jokes than you
You've
actually
literally
were.
done that
Oh my
before.
God.
You spliced the laughter from a good joke before we'd properly started doing the episode to an okay joke later on. So
FFF
this is the
listened back to
level of
that
false
episode.
news we're dealing with.
FFF listened back to that episode and was like, "That's weird. I don't remember having such a good time."
Oh,
Classic
that's funny.
Garfield.
I'm gonna have to jump off now, guys. But thank
Sure.
you for having me.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
cool,
thanks for
Eve.
coming on.
Thank you for coming on. It's
Cheers.
been very good.